Three messages before we get started. First, are you still using a web font from the 90s? In my interview with Pamela Wilson of BigBrandSystem.com, she said there are two critical parts to a blogger's brand: colors, and you guessed it, fonts. You see how easy it is to read the font at Big Brand System? Well, Pamela did that with Typekit.com, a website that allows you to use custom fonts on your blog. And hey, I use it for write-reviews too. It literally took me 5 minutes to get set up, and best of all, it's free. So get started at Typekit.com today. Second, if you're a serious blogger, it's time to consider a premium theme for your blog. But with so many options, how do you know which one is right for you? Well, let's see what the world's top bloggers are using. Ramit Sethi uses Thesis. Neil Patel uses Thesis. You can use Thesis too for just $87, and you'll find it at DIYthemes.com. Finally, have you noticed that little pop-up box at the bottom corner of Write Reviews? It's powered by a company called Kiss Insights, and just after I installed it, I got a question from a viewer saying, could you add an RSS feed widget so I can add you to my blog reader? So now, Write Reviews has got RSS. That's the actionable feedback you're going to get when you use kissinsights.com. Enjoy the program. Hi everybody, I'm Michael Alexis, producer of WriteReviews.com, and today I'm interviewing Danny Iny, the blogger behind Firepole Marketing. And if you're familiar with Danny's work, you'll know that I had trouble preparing for this interview, and the reason for that is that Danny is quite transparent in his writing, and in the previous months he's divulged many of the strategies and tactics that he used to bring Firepole Marketing to the great success it has in the last year. Danny, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
I appreciate it. Now, what I hope to do in this interview is dig a little bit deeper into some of those strategies and tactics you used, and if we're lucky, hopefully uncover some hidden ones too, maybe some that you haven't written about. So where I'd like to start then is the beginning. And what I found in my research was that what initially propelled your success was a guest post that went on Copyblogger. It got something like 200 comments, 900 tweets, which is a lot. How did it feel to have that kind of success so quickly?
It was very overwhelming. I mean, when that post went live, the only thought in my head was like, please don't bomb, please don't bomb. And the fact that people responded so positively, and I wasn't, like, there was a scheduling confusion on my part, so I thought it was going to be going up the next day, so I had cleared the next day to kind of be around and stuff, but like comments were pouring in, and I had to, go back and respond, and what I would generally do is respond to every comment, and in this case, I couldn't even do that because they were coming in so fast, and I was literally like in meetings and ignoring the people I was talking to and trying to catch up. So there's a whole bunch of comments where I respond to like 15 people in one comment. It was overwhelming. Like, I was really kind of like learning to swim by being like into the thing.
Dropped into the water.
But yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it was good. I was very happy with it, so I'm not complaining.
It's funny, I remember the first guest post that I put on ProBlogger, maybe a similar experience, not quite the scale, but because they're based in Australia, they had told me the date that the post would go live, and I didn't take that into account. So it actually went live, something like 12, 13 hours before I expected it to. And there wasn't a 200 comments, but there was, 20 or something to respond to by the time that I got there. So it's good. Let's talk a little bit more about that post that you made then. What do you think it was about that post? And actually maybe introduce the post for the readers that don't, the viewers that don't know about it. What was it about that post that resonated so well with the Copyblogger audience?
I think there's, well, I'll tell you what the post was. It was called 38 Critical Books That Any Blogger Should Read, or something to that effect. There were 38 books that people should read. I don't remember exactly how I spun it. And Brian Clark tweaked the headline and made it better than what
That's what he does.
It's what he does, exactly. But basically, over the years, I've read a lot of business books, and a lot of them are the books that people don't usually read. I find a lot of the stuff that is very well known tends to be either shallow or doesn't kind of offer that much value. And so I put together this list of these books that are some of them a bit off the beaten path, but they're all very good, very accessible, easy to read, and very thorough. They teach a lot. There's a lot of good information there. And I think bloggers who are serious, there's hobby bloggers who do it for fun, and then there's bloggers who are doing it because they want to make money. And if that's the case, they should really be seeing themselves as business people with a blog, rather than bloggers who are doing business on the side. It is a component of their business, and you have to understand how it works. So I created this list post of all these books. Now, I think it resonated partially because people are always happy to pick up recommendation, and everyone, most people like to read. Everyone's looking for a good tip, the next great idea they haven't thought of yet. But I think a big part of the engagement that out of that, and I mean, that's most of the most comments I've ever had on a post. And I don't most popular posts I've had more popular posts on Twitter, I've had more popular posts elsewhere, but none of those posts had as many comments. And I think the reason for that is I said at the bottom of a book like you think should be added to the list. Everyone has a favorite book, and sharing the name of that favorite book is easy. It's not like saying, do you have a favorite strategy? Write it down below, and they've got to write paragraphs explaining it. It's the title of the book. It takes all of 10 seconds. It's very easy. And that taught me something very important of kind of lowering the barrier to take action, trying to get people to do something. It's a good post. The books that it recommends are good. It's well explained, etc. It's solid content, but I think it's the nature of the post, nature of the ask that got people so engaged.
Right, I really like that, and certainly when I've talked to bloggers before, they've talked about how a list post can be more easily digested by a wider variety of readers, and that's part of the reason that they're so popular. But it hadn't occurred to me before that asking a simple question could go a long way too. What's the favorite book? Or if there's a list post about songs, it could be the same thing, right? Just 2 or 3 words, and they've made their comment. So that is good.
Yeah, or maybe recommend your favorite blogger or something, but something that literally they would have to put down a name, not and past that.
Right. Let's talk a little bit then about how you wrote off that initial success, because again, doing my research, I found that since January 10th, 2011, you've made something like 81 guest posts, and that's a lot. I imagine there's people watching this trying to scrounge up the time to write 1 or 2. What exactly was your strategy? How did you go from 1 guest post to 81?
One at a time.
Yeah, right. Well, let's talk about that one at a time. And what was your writing process for 1 post?
Well, the very first, in terms of kind of helping that momentum, at first it was really kind of writing by the seat of my pants. This had happened. I got the results. I was kind of working, and this is all in my How I Became the Freddy Krueger of Blogging post. This story is kind of documented. I saw that it was a good idea, so I pitched a couple of other places. They liked it. I thought it was a fluke, so I did a whole bunch more, figuring most of them would say no. They all said yes. Suddenly I was under the gun to write 10 posts in 2 weeks, and it all kind of snowballed from there, and I kind of hit on the idea of micro networks that I've then leveraged for different campaigns to successively my audience and the awareness of my work.
Right. I think
my process for writing a specific post is I think this is actually something very important, and I've alluded to it a little bit in different posts and emails. I get 3 to 5 emails a week from people who are like, "You write so much. Tell me your secret." And so I'm playing with the idea of actually creating something that'll teach people properly how to do this. But at a high level, you figure out where you want to write for. Let's say it is whatever. Name the post, name the blog that you want to write on. So you go onto their popular posts section, look at all of those posts, and you look for, and say they don't always show how many comments and stuff, but open them up and see which of those really performed well if there's 20 of them on the list. And what are the subjects of the ones that performed really, really well? And usually there's 2-3 subjects. So take that subject and think about what is the intersection between that subject and what you're about, and what is one insight of value that you can offer to the readers that is at that intersection. And then look at the structure of the headline for all of these posts. And again, you're going to usually see patterns. There are patterns of headline structures that work with a given audience. And craft a headline based on that structure around whatever that one insight is. And that's what when I propose a post to a blog, that's what I send them. I don't write out a post. I don't write an outline. This is what I want to write about the subject. This is the headline. But doing that research, I mean, people who've been blogging for a long time, they know their audiences. They know what their audience is going to respond to. That's enough to show them that, look, you're serious. You know what you're doing, because that looks like it's going to fit. And then, of course, you have to write the post. And this is where people, I think, get stuck a lot. It takes them. Most of my posts are long. My posts average 12 to 1,400 words, and I usually write them in about an hour and a half. And it's a very strict outlining process. I will write the hook, which is the first kind of third of the page, which is about grabbing attention by outlining or telling a story about, or like kind of bringing to the front the symptoms of the problem that are addressed by this insight. And I like to think my writing is good, and 81 posts later, my writing is better, and I've been writing for a long time. But the headline and the hook are they're the only part of the post that they're really spectacular. Once they're in, they're more or less in as long as the content is good, right? The rest of the post is substance, whereas the hook, which is just the first third of a page, is about style. So it's that part that you have to be a really good writer.
So what goes into a really good hook?
I try to always open with the first line. I try to keep it really short, like half a line on a blog screen. I find that visually it just makes it easier to grab. One short statement, and that could be anything. And then lead into, it's important that you don't lead directly into the insight or the problem. You lead into symptom, right? You kind of create a story, bring them into why they want to go into it. It's not hard to do, but give me an example of a potential insight.
I'm sorry, we had a little bit of lag there. I didn't hear the question or the comment that you just made.
Yeah, I said okay, so I was saying it's easy to do, but I need an. Let's say, for example, we want to write a post in the subject is productivity and personal development or whatever, and the insight is that we shouldn't multitask, because when we try to multitask, we don't actually get anything done. So the symptom of that is that you feel like you're working all the time and nothing is ever being produced, right?
Right.
So your hook might open with, "Are you tired?" ? That's the whole first line. Second line is, "If you are, you're probably not alone. A lot of bloggers are." Same for entrepreneurs, same goes for writers, same goes for almost everybody who dreams of creating something amazing. And if you're reading this blog, you probably dream of creating something. So you're building a connection. You're tying the symptom and the frustration to the big picture. Now, here's the thing. There's a reason why all these people feel tired, and there's a reason why all the people who dream about doing the most feel like they're achieving the least. Here's the secret. ... And that's the end of the hook, for example. Now, and obviously, this is off my head. I'd work it. I'd flesh it out a little bit, but at a high level, this would grab attention.
Well, I'll tell you that I am hooked already. I'd like to read the post.
So then the outline. Sorry?
So I just did want to follow up with one thought then. It sounds like the writing process is almost a marketing process as well, right? When I've studied, when I've read about in the past, that's the idea. You hook people with the symptom, and then you walk them towards the solutions. So what it sounds like is that your writing process is kind of a marketing one as well.
Absolutely. I think writing, again, I like to think that I'm a good writer. I've been writing for a long time, but I don't see writing as kind of an art where you do it for fun and it's about the beauty of the words. No, because writing is a means of communication. And the value of communication is measured by the person receiving the message. not by the intention of the person sending the message. And so as a writer, your job is to effectively educate, to help get a message across, to make people drawn into what you're talking about, care about it enough to pay attention, understand, and absorb. So yeah, and I think writing and marketing and educating, these are all very, very related areas when done well.
Right. Okay.
But so the process, okay?
Yeah.
So we've got the hook.
Okay.
And when I sit down to write a post, there's two steps. There's the outlining, and then there's the actual content. So, and the outlining takes usually 15 minutes. You know, I spent 10 minutes writing the hook, and I might clean it up later. I will create subheads. And each subhead is a different section. So after I've got the hook, the first subhead picks from the symptom to the problem. The second subhead is about the underlying cause of the problem. The third subhead is about the solution. And the fourth head is implementation of the solution. And coming up with like a name for that subhead and writing a couple of notes long, freehand of just, this is what I'm going to put here, takes 5 minutes. And so if I commit to 5 posts, create hook plus subhead titles for all 5 of them. And then sitting down and writing a third of a page of text for each subhead, because I know exactly what needs to go there, it's really not a lot of work. It's not hard. It's hard when you're sitting with a blank page and being like, where do I go from here? And these posts tend to come out very robust because they cover 2 things that most people don't do. I talk about what is the underlying cause of the problem and what is the things they need to know in terms of implementation. So if we're going with our people aren't getting things done, well, the reason they're not getting things done, the problem is they're multitasking. We have all these things to do, and we try to get them all done at once, then somehow we're making more progress. And it's hard not to because, all these things are popping up. There's our IM, there's our to-do list, there's our email, there's all this stuff going on. It all grabs at your attention. Except that the research all shows that when you multitask, your productivity drops so much on all the tasks that you're not even close to making up the time. So that's the problem. And I'd go further and be like, let's look at the underlying cause. And I touched on it, I guess, a little bit. I'd separate them out a little bit, but, we do it because we think it will make us productive. We do it because all these things are vying for our attention. Because it's not news to most people who've read a blog post or 2 about productivity that multitasking is not a good idea. And yet we keep on doing it. So why is that? So explain it, think through it. And then the solution is to single task. And here's a single task. But again, you've probably heard that before. And you aren't doing it, most likely, because most people aren't. So let's explain why that is and what the missing link might be. And by going that extra level of depth, and then you read through the post at the end and be like, does this leave questions asked on the part of the reader, or more that they would want to know? If there is, answer the questions. Read through the post and be like, if I was my audience and I read this, would I feel like I learned something, or did I just kill 5 minutes? And if they just felt like they killed 5 minutes, keep writing, add content, figure out what's missing to make it valuable. And it doesn't have to be time-consuming if you follow the process.
Right. All right, deeper. Where exactly did your process come from? Now you've got it. Now a year later, you've made 81 posts, and I see how it all comes together. What about a year ago when you were first getting started?
I didn't have it. I kind of evolved it as I went, and things used to take quite a bit longer. But to be fair, I've been writing since I was a kid. I started my career as a copywriter. My first book, which I published in 2006, is about effective communication in writing. So it's not like I came to this being like, I've never written anything, it's time to start. Like I've always written quickly because just by virtue of a lot of experience and practice. So that gave me a head start to kind of figure this out. But I could never, when I launched Engage from scratch last month, there were 24 guest posts that went up in November 6th and December 6th. And, at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't have been capable of doing that.
Right. So the process has gone a long way to increasing that speed and momentum.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've got the process. We're writing posts for our blog. We're writing lots of posts for other blogs. How do you draw people from that guest post on the other blog onto your page?
It depends. I mean, you've got your byline, which is, you try to make enticing about what you're doing. The more they see you around, the more they're going to be curious as to, guys, this read 2, 3, 5, 10 of his posts and I like them. I got more good stuff. It doesn't happen as much with the very first post. And so that repetition, exposure, and the whole micro network effect is valuable there too. Now, the other thing you can do, and particularly this happens later on, because with your very first guest post on someone, you're not going to be able to take a lot of liberties with their audience. You haven't earned their trust very legitimately. But once you've kind of been in there a little longer, they will, because you've delivered value, you've created good stuff, they see that you have the best intentions for their audience, they'll give you a little more leeway in terms of what you can do and what you can share in the posts. And a good example of that is several years ago, John Morrow did a thing where he wrote a post on Copyblogger called "Is Your Blog Screwed Up?" or something to that effect. Screwed up your blog? ? And he offered some free advice and consulting, which I'm sure led to a lot of business to anyone who shared a comment saying, I'm having trouble. This is what it is. Now, he did that on Copyblogger. Brian let him do it because John had written tons of great stuff for him. John had earned that opportunity. And it's by virtue of creating repeated value for people that you're able to do that. I mean, I think a big part of the mistake that people make when they look at guest posting is thinking that it's about any single post. And it's not. It's about a process of activity that builds relationships and exposure with audiences across the blogosphere with different bloggers.
Right. So again, building these relationships over time, I think very important. Then you mentioned bylines. Once you have those relationships, bylines are a good way to get people to your page. John Morrow, you said, found his way of offering consulting services. What exactly do you do now? There's certainly a few blogs that you frequent. Some of them that come to mind are Copyblogger and Men with Pens and Think Traffic and a handful of others. Now that you have those relationships, now that you guest post there all the time, what is the tactic for bringing people on over to Firepole Marketing?
Well, it's to continue to create value and to do it in bigger and bigger ways. I mean, engagement from scratch is a good example of that. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have relationships with some of these people who very generously contribute their time and energy to write a chapter for the book. And all of that, I mean, the better an offer you have, likely people are going to want to come. I've written this awesome book. Well, I've assembled this awesome book that, a lot of other great people have written. And you can have free. Just click here and go download it. That's a strong ask. It's a strong offer. And so when it was promoted and with the help of a lot of the people who helped me to spread the word, a lot of people clicked through and downloaded the book, which is fantastic. And then I'm looking forward to continuing to be an active contributor to these communities, but it's less and less about the traffic and more about the relationships. You see, there are different stages in the blog, and the amount of traffic you can get from any particular post back to your site, depending on the scale of the site, it can be big, it can be great, but it's limited. And it makes a lot of sense to do that when you have no readers. When you do have a readership over a certain size, which we're currently do, it makes more sense to write more great stuff on your own blog. I mean, all your stuff should be great, but focus your attention on writing great stuff on your own blog and let your audience spread the word. If you've got 30 readers, that's not going to happen. But if you've got thousands, there's enough of a critical mass there that they can start spreading the word for you. So a lot of it is kind of seeing where you are in that growth curve and what is the best strategy for you at a particular time. There is no strategy that is always the best at all points of growth for everything always.
Right. As you talk about critical mass and you mentioned the micro networks as well, I'm thinking maybe the best way to let the viewers in on those is to reference some of the guest posts you've made, because you've certainly talked about it extensively, and on Firepole Marketing as well. So let's try to find spots that you haven't written about. So one thing I'm curious about is, in all of the guest posts that you've done, in all of this promotion work you've done, what was the single greatest source of traffic to your own blog?
That's a good question.
It's maybe not fair to put you
I
on the
think,
spot, but
I think the no, no, I'm fine to answer it. It's been 81 posts, and I don't have a quick reference sheet to compare a fair number. I mean, you're definitely going to get the most traffic from the biggest blog, right? Posting on sites like ProBlogger or Copyblog, that's where you're going to get the most traffic. No question about that. But you're also going to get a lot of traffic when you have like a very strong ask, so to speak, something of great value that really resonates with an audience. Like I've written posts on Think Traffic, for example, that got close to the scale of traffic back to my site as a site like ProBlogger, which is orders of magnitude bigger. So it really depends. But then at the same time, my last post on ProBlogger, why I wrote the kind of book that I hate, which was the kind of flagship launch post for Engage from Scratch. They seem to really like it, and they've been featuring it on the homepage for like 3 weeks since then, and that's created an immense amount of traffic and downloads, which has been fantastic, and I'm very grateful to Darren and Georgina for doing that. But again, like first of all, they seem to like it. I hope for a good reason. And I think this is like my 9th post for them. So there's a certain amount of paying your dues and earning the trust and the chance that has to happen.
Right, and offering all that.
I think I don't know if you've read. I don't know if it's Good to Great or Built to Last, but Jim Collins has this concept, flywheel effect, where you get a flywheel turning with push after push after push, and it kind of picks up a momentum. But you can't put any particular push as the push that did it, right? It all kind of contributes together, and a whole is more than the sum of its parts.
Right. I think a good lesson that certainly the viewers can read more about. I'm pausing because unfortunately on my end of the video we're still staggering a bit, so I'm trying to catch up with the lag. Let's change the stream of the conversation a little bit. When we started out, I said that it was a difficult interview to research because you have quite openly written about your strategies. So what I'd like to do is a little bit of imagination. Imagine we did this interview a year from now. Where exactly do you want to be, and how are you planning to get there?
I'm not sure how much of that I'm comfortable sharing. I do have some big goals for the coming year.
Sure.
But in hindsight, if I share, what it was and how I did it and what went well and what didn't, then it's sharing good information. In foresight, saying, I'm this and I'm going to do that, that's kind of just bragging and being full of myself.
All right, so perhaps we'll do another interview in a year.
Let's wait and see how it yeah, there you go.
Not a problem. We'll be following along.
I can't say that does work out well. You can look forward to. I mean, I'm hoping to write and publish 3 books in the next 18 months. So knowing how real timelines go, it might take longer than that, but hopefully at least one of them will be published in the coming year. I'm hoping Firepole Market will be getting a whole lot bigger, which I is happening, every day in front of me, which is amazing. But we're looking to take on a whole new scale of impact in the marketing world.
Right. 3 books is quite ambitious. Why so many?
Sorry?
3 books is quite ambitious.
Say it again?
Why so many?
They each have a specific and gap that I am looking to fill. And they're quite distinct in terms of the messages. Like, I can't just make them all one big book. They're semi-related, but they're semi-unrelated too. So it's 3 books. There's 3 things I want to write about.
Right. Let's maybe books is a good way to lead into another part of the conversation then, which is monetization. Since you've been getting all this traffic to Firepole Marketing, what are the ways that you have monetized your site?
Sure. Well, there are 2 ways in which, and again, I don't like that technology of monetizing a site. I don't have a site. I have a business, and the site is part of the marketing of that business. But it is not something that gets monetized. The site is just something that contributes to the business. And I think that's an important mental shift that people who want to be successful successful as online business owners with a blog, they need to make that switch. It's not like a site has, all this latent money quality that you just need to kind of unlock. It's that it has to fit into a strategy that makes sense. So there are two ways in which we make money. Is with direct coaching or consulting services, which is either working with clients one-on-one in a mentorship and coaching capacity or in a small group, or taking on, I do manage the marketing campaigns for a small number of clients on a very large scale. The second, and that's kind of the high touch, high margin kind of, that's when, if you want to spend a lot of money, that's what you'll do. And then there's a low ticket, comparatively lower touch offering, which is our training programs in different formats. And our flagship training programs, our 6-month marketing training program. Every week there's a lesson, very thorough, very robust. We do provide very in-depth email support. But so we've got these kind of 2 tiers, and it's only these 2 tiers. And I think having focus around how you're making money versus what is just part of marketing is really important. Because, I see all these sites who've got AdSense ads splashed onto them because they think, oh, it's another source of monetization. It's like, do the math. If you get, let's say, 20 cents per click, when someone clicks on the ad, and let's say 1 in 100 people clicks who are on the page actually click on the ad, that means 500 clicks for $1. That means that if you want to make $1,000 in a month, which is not an income in and of itself, but let's just pick a number, $1,000, you have 500,000 people on the site every month, which is just way out of scale of what is realistic for most sites. And if you have 500,000 people on your site, and the best way to make money with it you can think of AdSense, and you've got a problem there too. So think about what is the real strategy, what makes sense, and don't just kind of throw in, oh, this might also be a way of making money. If something real, then have a real strategy behind it.
Right. Do you need a certain number of people coming to your site, coming to your business before you can start earning money from it?
It depends on your model.
Right.
I mean, if we want to get technical, you need a minimum of 1 person coming to your site who comes and buys. And it's possible the first person who comes to your site actually buys something from you, but usually it doesn't work out that way. And there are going to be conversion rates at play, and you'll recognize that depending on what you're selling, you sell to 1 out of every X people. And then there's a question of, well, do I need a critical mass in order, if I'm selling a coaching program, does it make sense for 1 person, or do I need 10 people in it for it to be cost effective? If I sell it to just 1 person, is that as 10 people seeing each other express interest in terms of social proof and so forth? So it all comes down to what is the strategy. But I mean, do you need people to see what you've got in order to buy it? Yes, of course. How many people? That depends on what you're offering. You're making that offer.
Right. In your case, what kind of traffic was Firepole Marketing getting before you looked to earn money from the business?
We launched Firepole Marketing. The blog launched towards the end of 2010, but functionally we were only working through it from about January 2011. Our training program was done at that time. We launched, we've done various different activities in terms of, launch campaigns and stuff like that. But it was well to around the start before we started seeing much money from the blog. And the majority of the money we've made from the blog was in the last in the last half of the year. So since about July.
Right, and you mentioned that there was the 2 ways of monetization. Which one is it that's earning the greatest income?
The one-on-one individual work, okay. Which makes sense. Right? The other one is more a function of volume.
Right. Okay, the other thing, a few times in this interview you said we and our business, etc., but we haven't actually talked about your business partner yet. I think, myself included, but maybe many of the readers of Firepole Marketing identify you as the face of it, right? Just because of all the guest posts you've done, because of all the writing you've done. Could you maybe tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I've kind of emerged as the face of Firepole marketing for the time being.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit more about your business partner and that relationship?
For sure. So my partner's name is Peter Vagopoulos. Peter and I met somewhere on the business networking circuit. I'm on like some networking event or other. I can't even remember what it was, but years and years ago, maybe 4 years or something. I am a marketing strategist. He is a marketing and business coach. So there's a lot of overlap between what we do, but there's also like a difference in terms of focus. But what we hit it off. We got along, and we found that we have a shared take on marketing. And marketing is one of those things that anyone who's written a book about it or taken a course on it thinks they understand marketing. And unfortunately, most people don't, which is why there's so many quote-unquote marketers out there who are not doing very well at all. And to say you are a marketer could mean that, I do marketing, or it could mean, I have expertise in marketing, and they don't mean the same thing. And so we, he had his coaching practice, I had my practice. Both were doing pretty well. It's how we paid the bills and so forth. And our target markets are small businesses, and we work with very large companies, but we prefer to work with smaller businesses. My focus is, people in the 0 to 10 employee range, because I find that I'm a teacher in my personality. And I appreciate that there is knowledge transfer that happens when I help people at that. That doesn't happen when you're working with a large corporation. You write, they pay you, oodles of money, but then what really happens with that report? People really learn how to do things better. Are they empowered? And not necessarily in a corporation, much more so in a small business. And so that target market, and small businesses and entrepreneurs in 0 to 10 employee range. And there are many of them that are doing well and certainly afford our services, but there are also many that are very early stage and struggling and don't really know what they don't know and don't know what to do and need a lot of help and really can't afford it. And we feel for people in that situation. We received a lot of help when we were starting out, and so both Peter and I would give a lot of our time for free to help people out, and we're happy to do it. The entrepreneurial community is a very straightforward kind of community, which is great. But our time doesn't scale. You can help 3 people, you can't help 30 or 300 in that way. And so we started looking around for, what can we refer them to? Is there a training program or something? And we really couldn't find anything that we felt was thorough, robust, would teach them for real and not just some tactics, and would kind of give them the leg they need. And so we decided to build that training program. And what makes our program different is, first of all, it's very thorough. It's very. We invested together about 2,500 hours building this content, which is an enormous amount of time. But it's not just the content, it's the delivery of the content. Peter is a university professor who teaches entrepreneurship and related subjects. I've been running and involved with educational companies for over a decade. And so we brought a lot of that educational expertise to the development of the content. It's explaining something is not the same as teaching it. And teaching it properly involves structuring it and delivering it in a way that people will hear it, understand it, absorb it, apply it, and retain it. And we've structured the program in a way that makes sure that all of that will happen. So that's Peter and I coming together. We built the program, and the dynamic that kind of emerged was that I was doing a lot more of the forward-facing stuff of Firepole marketing, and just by virtue of my circumstances and because I had a little more time that I was able to invest as well. And Peter ended up doing a lot more of the content management and stuff. Although that dynamic may change in the future.
Right. Let's try to make this really relevant for the viewers. So we can imagine, they're sitting there, and we've inspired them in this interview to start a business with a blog instead of a blog that later somehow gets monetized as a site, and they think, okay, well, maybe I'm going to do this with a business partner. What are some of the things they need to watch out for? What are the kind of things that they need to do in the very beginning to make sure that that relationship works, that business works?
I think the first question is to think about why a partner. I wrote there's a very long post on Freelance Switch about managing and choosing and all that. stuff with partnerships. So people can look it up if they want. But I think the first question really needs to be thought about is, why do you want to partner? And often people will say, I want to partner because, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to do that. What comes down to it is they're looking for a partner because they want someone to invest the labor instead of them having to pay for it to get done. And if you're looking at something like, the technical stuff of setting up a site or getting a design made or anything that basically, you pay $500 to have someone do, that's a really bad reason to get a partner on board. And you're giving away half of your business. You're giving away control of half of your business. You're introducing all these elements of risk into your business to save a few $100s. That doesn't make any sense. Your partner has to bring complementary skills that are relevant in the extended term, and they have to bring a serious level of commitment. It's got to be someone that that you can get along with, that you can work with them comfortably. And none of those things are easy to A, ascertain, or B, predict when circumstances change. So I'd say, have a really good reason to do something with someone. It's not the default option. You only bring someone in if there's a really good reason and a need. And if you're going to do that, set very clear norms and expectations in terms of, this is how we're going to work, this is what is expected of each of us, and this is how we're going to resolve things if these expectations are not being met. Something that can be helpful is to do various assessments and explorations when you first get started. Do StrengthsFinder, do the TKI, do the DISC, do all that kind of stuff, and compare your results to get a real sense of, how are each of you strong, how are you weak, what is your style of communication, of interaction, how can you guys learn to effectively work together. But if you don't work together, a partnership agreement, I'm not big on contracts. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, etc. But I'm not big on contracts because I think, technically speaking, in most cases, they're not enforceable. Unless you are, you've got to go to court, you've got to pay a lawyer, unless you're looking at a deal value of over $20,000, it's probably going to cost you more to enforce a contract than it's going to cost you just to get done anyway. So there's no point in, I don't believe in contracts for managing deals, but I do believe in setting very clear expectations. Here's how everything is going to work. Here's what we're agreeing to for this eventuality, for that eventuality. Not because it's binding, but because, 6 months later, 12 months later, 24 months later, people forget. And people have different ideas of how they expect things to work. And you don't realize that until further down the line, because we assume that people are fundamentally like us, especially if we like them. I'm sure everyone's had the experience where you meet someone, you get along with them, and at some point further down the line, they have very different views than you do about religion or politics or something sensitive that never came up. And you think that, but they're so cool and they're so smart, they must see it the way I do. But people often don't, and that's legitimate, but you've got to put that stuff on the table and not you expectations. They have theirs, and then a year later when there's, things have gone downhill and they're going in different directions, how are you going to fit it together?
Right. It's something I've heard from a lot of business partners in the past before too, which is that when things are going well with the business, everything, the partnership's good, but it's the hard times when you're not making a lot of money, or even when you're losing it, that it's really put to the test.
Yeah, that's a really good point, by the way, is the issue of expectations. New businesses don't make money in the short term in most cases. It takes time to ramp up. It's been, this is our first year at Firepole Marketing, and all told, I think we've made about, $25,000, maybe $30,000, something in that range, which is great for, the first year of a business, and I expect 2012 to be an order of magnitude higher. Things are going fantastically, but $30,000 is not an income for two people. It's a side thing, and there's expenses as well. So you don't make a lot of money in the first year unless you get really lucky. And so have reasonable expectations and put those expectations on the table in terms of how much work are we going to put in, how much money are we going to put in, for how long before we start seeing something. What are we both willing to do? Are we both on the same page about it? What happens if we get to that point and we're not on the same page, or we're not there? How are we going to handle that? And Peter's a great guy. I love the guy. We have a great time working together. But there have been disagreements, there have been conflicts. Stuff has happened in his life. Stuff has happened in my life. And you've got, like, if you're going to work with someone for an extended period of time, you've got to be able to sit down and talk through them and kind of both come to the table with the expectation that you both mean well and you're both trying to get things done as effectively and helpfully as possible. So it's really got to be someone that you trust, and that you trust to do well and to put kind of what is right and what is fair and best for the business and for both of you ahead of whatever they happen to be dealing with. And that goes for, whoever you're considering should be evaluating you on the same metrics.
Right. How many hours a week do you spend on Firepole marketing?
It's getting harder and harder to delineate because more and more of my business happens or through Firepole marketing. At the beginning of the year, I had clients that I connected with offline, unrelated. I had a very distinct business set, whereas now it's meshing together a lot more. But I can say in the early days, I probably put in a good 15 to 25 hours a week consistently, which is quite a bit of time. It's worth noting that I have a full-time. A good chunk of her time went to Firepole marketing related work as well. So you had some growth, which has been fantastic, but it takes time. And could I have done it, in hindsight, if I had to start over? If I had to, start from scratch, as it were. Could I do it faster, better, etc.? Yes, I could, because I've learned a lot along the way. There's a lot of stuff that we tried that I didn't have to do because it didn't work. There's a lot of things that I could have done more of. So, can you go from 0 to whatever in the course of a year working part-time? Technically, it's possible, but it's really hard. And it's like the people who are best positioned to do it are the people who really have the time to put in more time anyway. So it is difficult to get started, and it's important to have realistic expectations. I'm not telling people not to do it. I'm saying realistic expectations. You might be at this for 2 years, and it's important to care about it enough to be willing to stick it through for that whole length of time.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about this time management, because you're right, not everybody has 25 hours a week to put in at the beginning. Maybe some people have more, some people have less. But from the beginning till... Actually, now, I think more recently is the more interesting part. Now you're writing books. Now, in my research, I saw that you have a startup as well, Bowl of Goals. Now, it seems like there's a lot of things going on just beyond the writing for Firepole marketing. How are you managing your time now to make sure that all gets done?
I have no idea.
Fair enough.
Some people are very single-tasking type people. They have one big project they're working on, and that takes all their attention. I'm a to have several projects on the go at once, and I've gotten good. I've been doing this for a long time. I've gotten good at finding kind of an 80-20 balance with these projects, where most projects require 20% of my time at any given time, and sometimes they spike and they'll require a very large amount of. But as long as you manage the spikes so that they don't all come at once, you can have kind of, 4 projects on the go that seem like intense projects like that, as long as the spikes are timed, not overlap. Now, sometimes they do overlap and, you get really busy.
Right.
But more or less I manage it.
It's funny. It seems kind of ironic to have this
It's important to note that, on Bowl of Goals, I have 2 parts.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Bowl of Goals is?
Sure. Bowl of Goals is a place where you can go share your goals and have people who know you and are close to you, and people who don't know you but would care about your goal find out about it and support your goal and help you get there. It's really that simple. It's an incredibly simple user experience. You go, you poke around for 3 minutes, you get it, and you love it or you don't. And if you love it, then you choose goals to support, or you just create your own goal, which takes all of 9 seconds, and you're off to the races.
Right. As a high-level overview, maybe it's enough for our viewers. They can check it out if they like when they have time. Let's ask a couple more sort of nuts and bolts questions about writing. When it comes to your posts, you told us the process for the hook and the content. What about titles? Where do your titles come from?
I'm sorry?
Titling your posts,
Oh, the headlines.
the headlines.
The headlines are right at the beginning. I see the angle, and I've got to find a headline. And you can't, like, you've got to have a solid idea for a headline that's going to grab people before you start writing the post. The headline drives the post to a certain extent. It sets the angle. And in most cases, less so now, because over time you develop a bit of a feel for what you think is going to work. But, you look at what's on a site, look at the patterns, and copy the pattern. Don't copy the headline, copy the pattern. Like, that's the key thing.
Right, copy the pattern. It certainly makes sense. And then when it comes time to writing them on your own blog, and presumably over time you've developed your own pattern and found something.
Pretty much.
Okay, right.
And over time, also, like, you're going to recognize kind of meta patterns across many sites. Like, there are some things that they tend to work in general because most readers are human beings and share a lot of neural anatomy. So, once you kind of get a sense of that, you can apply that to any post. You apply it to your own post. Your headlines get better in general over time.
What are some of those meta patterns? What are the kind of things that we can put into our headline to make it appeal to this wide range of people?
Well, the best kind of short guide to writing headlines that I've seen is Sean D'Souza's, I think it's called Why Headlines Fail or something like that, from Psychotactics. And he outlines 3 key things. It should be question-based, not answer-based. It should evoke curiosity, and it should be problem-based, not solution-based. And at a high level, that kind of give you pointers to direct your headline or tweak your headline in the right direction. But, like, basically point to the symptoms. Point to experience that people are having in the language that they would use. Same lessons that would apply to copywriting.
Right, and maybe another resource that we can point the viewers towards. I'm going to jump back to something we were just talking about with the time management. And you said that if you were to do it all again, if you could do 2011 again, you could have done it much more efficiently. There's things that you could have emphasized more. There's things you wouldn't have bothered doing. Mm-hmm. Can you give us more specifics about what those are?
Sure. Well, a lot of the things that I kind of figured out along the way, which I've written out as strategies and best practices, etc., I could have done them from the beginning. So there was a lot of just muddling around, trying things, kind of realizing how things worked or what was really the best strategy to follow, how it all kind of fit together. It took time for that to crystallize, and having that from the beginning would have made a big difference in terms of just save time.
Right. And what about the biggest time wasters of the year? I don't want to call them time wasters because, of course, you learned a lot from them, but the things that you would have left out.
I think it's hard to say. Like, it's not like I can point to a specific... Like, here's the thing. Good planning doesn't happen on the tactical level. It happens on the strategic level. So pointing to a tactic and saying, this one was the mistake, I should have written this post or whatever, like, the tactical steps are fairly inconsequential. They only matter when you fit them all together. So I can say it as a high level. I wouldn't have invested so much time in content on firewall marketing in the early. It would have created great content at a lower frequency and focused more on posting places where people were actually reading until we had a readership. For example, I think that's the biggest insight for people. I think if your audience, I'm sure, is familiar with John Morrow, who's in the process of launching his new blog, boostblogtraffic.com. And he's doing it in a very interesting way. If you go to boostblogtraffic.com, it doesn't look like a blog. You see a trailer saying, check it out, my cool blog is coming soon, put your name and email address in here, and I'll let you know when it's up. Now, that's a very simple way of doing it, and I think John can get away with it because John Morrow, he's a fantastic writer. Everyone knows who he is. But at a high level, the idea of create some really solid, non-time delineated pillar content. Don't create it in a format like a blog that people expect to refresh frequently. Just have great stuff. Get people to opt in and spend all your time posting elsewhere, getting the traffic to come in, get them to become a part of your tribe, create an autoresponder series so that they're engaged on an ongoing basis. and only focus on bringing all that content production in-house when you have enough of a critical mass to appreciate it. Because there is a kind of velocity problem with new blogs, which is that you've got to post where the people are, which is elsewhere, but they've got to come back to your site and find something good. And so people feel like they have to write good stuff frequently on a regular basis on their own site. And this basically means that you're stuck maintaining two very demanding editorial calendars at the same time. And you're doing it at the early stage of your blog where you have, comparatively speaking, the least amount of time because it's probably still a part-time activity. So, I mean, I didn't do it the way I'm describing because I didn't figure this out until recently, partially by watching John's example. But if I was starting from scratch, that's definitely something I would do differently. You know, I would invest less time in writing for my 7 readers and focus more time on just creating something awesome for people coming in to engage with and remember me and subscribe and so forth, and create more content in places where people are reading.
Right. I think very, very useful advice, and you've actually answered a few more of my questions as you were giving it. Maybe one last question before we finish up the interview then, which is just a piece of advice, something that the viewers can do this afternoon to get a step further ahead on their blog.
It's a very general question. It depends on where they are.
Right.
I would say do something, and do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. So if, don't read anything, don't study anything, don't think about anything, just do something. Whether it's writing a post, whether it's, sending an email, a bunch of big blogs saying, I'd like to write this post for you and here's why the audience would like it. Whether it is get out there and engaging on Twitter or in the comments or whatever, do something. I had a conversation with Peter yesterday, 2 days ago, on Tuesday. 2 days ago we had this conversation, and I'll give you a little teaser in terms of the stuff we have coming in 2020. In January, we're doing our marketing ideas contest. There's going to be amazing stuff there. The submissions are spectacular. In February, we're reopening our training program to students for a short window. And then in March, we're going to be doing a research study on productive marketing. What is productive with people? What is the stuff that they do that makes them get actual results in their marketing? And Peter is spearheading that campaign. And we were having lunch, we were just talking, he said, what about this methodology, that methodology? Because as a coach, he's very literate in all the different time management and productivity methodologies. And I told him, I'm not in the world of time management or productivity at all. I'm too busy getting stuff done. and that's what I would encourage to people, just get something done. If you have an afternoon, think of one thing that you can do in the afternoon and get it.
Right. I think that's a very useful piece of advice to leave them with. So when they finish watching this video, go out and get something done. Danny, I want to thank you so much for your time and a ton of useful advice, actionable advice that the viewers can take. And this time I actually want to thank the viewers as well, because I know that this recording will be staggered. It may have been hard to listen to, but if you listened carefully, again, a lot of useful advice.
Thank you very much for having me, and I apologize to the viewers as well for the choppy connection, but hopefully there were at least a few nuggets of information that make it worthwhile.
A ton, and I'll see if I can get a transcript to make it a little bit easier. Maybe people prefer to read this one, but we'll get your message to them.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much.
All right, thanks a lot, Danny. Take care.